So the only thing I see in me that I don't see in my peers who are trying to get where they want to go and who aren't getting there is that I'm not afraid to die on a treadmill, right? You might be taller than me, you might be sexier than me, you might be stronger than me, you might be more talented than me, you might have all those other things on me. But if you and I get on a treadmill, either you're getting off first or I'm going to die. I will not be outworked, right? That's a Will Smith quote from the Tavis Smiley show a couple of years ago. And if nothing else, Will Smith is very inspiring, right? And I was definitely born with work ethic. It started with my grandfathers, came down to my parents, and then to me. And in high school, I was incredibly overweight, right? And that was a real challenge because my mind, my body couldn't keep up with my mind. And while my mother cooked very wholesome food for me, and she's a wonderful cook, she wasn't cooking at the corner store by the bus stop, and she certainly wasn't cooking in the school cafeteria. So that ends part one, and what would an inaugural TEDx talk be without a Confucius quote, right? So it's as fatal as to go beyond as it is to fall short. So by the time I got to college, right, I'd had all that work ethic, and I went to college for two reasons, pretty much in this order, and probably a few more after that, but one for golf and then two for economics. And I couldn't understand why I was outworking everyone on our championship golf team, and they were whooping my tail on the golf course, right? And it was really damaging. It started to really bring down what my aspirations are, really questioning, like, why am I not getting to the places that I want to be? Which leads us to part three, and a quote from my mother. Boy, I don't know how you do it, but you always fall in crap and smell like roses, right? So on graduation day from college, my roommate's father gave me a job on Wall Street with my 2.6 GPA, right? And it was never an aspiration of mine to be in finance or to be on Wall Street, but I'd never been in New York City. And I believed in Mr. Cavallo and his family, and he told me, he said, I think you're going to learn the things that you need to learn from Wall Street, even if it's not something you want to do for the rest of your life. So I loaded up my Jetta and tied it to the back of a U-Haul and pulled into Staten Island for my first time ever to be in New York, which is a very interesting place. And he was exactly right. So what I got to learn on Wall Street was I got to see the world through financial markets. And I got there in 2007, just as the economy was collapsing, right? And I learned how to, as Abraham Lincoln would say, right? If you're going to give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'm going to spend 4 hours sharpening the axe. So I started to learn to take that work ethic I had and work smarter. I got my axe really sharp. And we're talking about checklists from the speaker that we just watched the video from. That's why I brought my notebook with me on stage, because I take it everywhere. And I started to have this really meticulous notebooking process, and I started to work really smart, get really good at planning. So you had work ethic, and then a sharp axe, and a good system for planning. So after 3 years, I'd actually somehow, for the kid that was picking up breakfast and lunch for the whole trading desk, and the only one in my 20s, who they dubbed Bobby 2 Cents, and you can kind of see I'm a bit of a sneakerhead, but when I showed up on Wall Street, so I had to go buy these pair of black shoes, right? And I go to, I think it was Men's Warehouse or something like that, and I got like, whatever was on sale, and first day on the trading desk, like, oh, Bobby, welcome. Great shoes, man. Did they just take the braces off those? What are those? I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be a long adventure, right? So, but working through that, I had to get in at 5 a.m. and I had to write our morning note that went out to all 500 of our institutional customers. And I kept refining that, making it better because I was competitive and I was learning, and it got ranked in the top 3 in Wall Street when I was 24 by Institutional Investor. So all of a sudden, I kind of get this like head of steam. It's like, man, I don't know. I'm not going to stay here forever. This is a system that's falling apart, and it's not doing too much good for the world. But I'm starting to understand. I'm starting to be me now, right? I'm starting to come out. I'm starting to feel strong. And so I left Wall Street knowing nothing more than A, I'd become a food snob in New York, and B, that I wanted to build and create something with myself and with a team. So you saw teams fall apart in New York, and you saw weak links, and like our previous speaker was talking about with a pit crew, nobody was going to do the real work. They all kind of, at the top anyway, kind of put a lot more energy into pretending that they were good at something than it would actually take to be great at something. So I went to a startup company in Corning, New York, after 3 years on Wall Street. The last 2 months, at least, I did not get breakfast and lunch anymore. But I also hadn't been making much money yet. And I took my $600 and went to a startup company in Corning, New York, and lived in this guy's attic for 6 weeks. It was also our office. And then I ran out of money. So in about 6 weeks, I went from a relatively strong prospect on Wall Street to my grandmother's basement back in Greensburg. And I sat there and I'm like, now what am I going to do? But it wasn't like in the past where I had failed and whatnot. I knew my axe was sharp. I knew I was capable. I knew my work ethic was on. I knew my processes were in line. I knew I'd built systems in my own way of teaching myself. And I was trying to just figure out where else to go in the world because I'd learned so much from New York. I wanted to go explore somewhere else. And a week later, my dad got diagnosed with cancer. So my best friend in the world, Justin, his father was sick at the same time, and I moved in with him. And we started planning Bar Marco because Justin and Kevin had this dream of opening a restaurant. And I said, okay, well, I can help out with this. And we brought Michael back and forth from New York to design the first Bar Marco. And 9 months later, Justin's dad passed away during my father's funeral service. So then we really had nothing to lose. You know, our fathers, you know, we got to spend a lot of time with them through that process. And we really kind of took the opportunities now that the world was showing us. This is where we first started to realize, okay, it's not just about your natural work ethic and how driven you can be and then how sharp your axe can be, but you're sharpening all those things not necessarily for an opportunity, but to shape yourself so that you're ready when the world gives you opportunities, right? It's all the boring stuff. It's all the times when you think, man, I'm never going to become anything. I'm never going to impact the world any good way. However I define the world, maybe it's my community, maybe it's the world, right? Maybe it's going into space, who knows? But at that point, we had planned for 5 months and had a tight plan for the first Bar Marco, right? And Michael loads up all of his stuff in New York, and he's getting on a plane, and as he's on his way back here, the deal fell through. So then we're really distraught, and what are we going to do? Well, we need a drink before we go to pick up Michael from the airport and figure out who's going to drive us to the airport now. And we go sit down, and beside us at the bar was a guy that worked with Kevin at First Niagara downtown, at the bank downtown that Kevin worked at. And he hears our story, and he's like, Kevin, you know, my father's got a bar that's coming up for rent in the Strip District. And I'm looking at him like, all right, buddy. Like in the Strip District at that time, there's just these giant clubs. It had just gotten over its relationship with shootings, right, or its connection with having shootings down there. And I'm like, well, what is it? And he goes, it's Embry. I just dropped my glass. So Embry was the first real craft cocktail bar in Pittsburgh. It was the hottest spot in Pittsburgh still, and no one knew they weren't going to sign their lease, right? So we planned, our axe is sharp, and now all of a sudden this thing falls apart, but we're still sharp, and it falls into our lap. And the only problem left was how we were going to get to the airport. So, and then, what am I going to tell Michael when I get there? When he left JFK to take off, all of our plans went down, right? So we call our friend Mizzle, actually, and he takes us to the airport. And I'm like, all right, what am I going to say to Michael? And nobody else would come in with me. Michael's taller than all of us. He's stronger than all of us. And I see him coming down the escalators, like waving at me, and I just go, oh no. So he gets down, and I said, Michael, you got to listen to me. All that stuff we've been planning for the last 5 months, it's gone. But we got a new place. He just looks at me. We start getting an argument in the middle of the airport. They lost his bags. He had 10 bottles of wine he had brought back that were older than we were, right? All birthday year wines. And we get in the car. We don't say a word the whole way there. And Mizzle takes us straight to what was the Firehouse Lounge in Emory. And Michael gets out of the car, being an architect coming back from New York, looks up at the building, goes, oh yeah, this will do. Great, walks in, says, glass vestibule, gone. We're going to rip this out, drop down ceiling. Now at this point, the place is still open and thriving. And so we're walking around this place like, everyone's like, what are these guys doing? Right? And it's engineered wooden tile floors. It's a firehouse. It was built in 1860. And for some reason, in the 1960s and 70s, we like to make all these fake materials and cover up beautiful things, right? So we still had another problem. We didn't have any money yet. So we got a $49,000 loan from Justin's father's farmhouse that he had been dealt with. The problem with that was we got math, right? $45,000 was the cost of the liquor license, and $4,000 were the legal fees, which left us, again, with nothing. But the landlord was kind enough to let us have 4 months free rent. We built everything ourselves. We built the bar, we built the back bar, everything, tables, and I lived in the basement for the first 2 months during construction, which is great because the water pressure in an old firehouse like that is still the best water pressure of a shower I've ever had. So it's a great employee lounge now. So now you've got to see the thing come full circle, right? You start off with all this work ethic to the point where you're just confused and spinning your tires in the mud, and then you learn about sharpening your axe and how you can create your notebook and organize and start to be efficient. And then now what? Oh, I think I'm going to go to Corning, and it all falls apart, and then you come back and you understand that opportunities come your way, and then it's back to work ethic again and building things. So whenever we get into, what do we do from there, right? How do we continue to affect the environment? We got two things going forward, right, that we're really focused on now. One is our nonprofit, Food Revolution Pittsburgh Cooking Club. So 3 years ago, we started going to the Obama Academy in East Liberty at Pittsburgh Public High School. We started cooking with these kids every Tuesday, right? Keeping it full circle, going back to me being the kid at the bus stop, right? And, well, what are we going to do with all these kids now every Tuesday now that they're so good at cooking and they're all asking us for jobs? So we're about halfway to our fundraising goal of $300,000 to buy them their own food truck so that there's a gas station right across the street from the Obama Academy where they line up to eat. Now the kids of the cooking club can earn $10 an hour feeding exquisite food to their friends and ripping off the gas station's business. And I told the kids we might even start selling gas just to prove a point, right? And the second thing is the launch of our no gratuity policy that we just put in, right? Well, that was a heck of a press storm, especially for a restaurant that doesn't have a PR team or anything like that. And why would we do this thing, right? Why would we not want to accept gratuity? Why would we want to just pay people more? Well, even Ted is confused here. So it's because we made so many mistakes over the first 3 years that we'd actually become pretty good at our process in proactively seeing problems that could arise and eliminating them before they become a problem. So 70% of restaurants fail in their first 3 years, as every banker reminded us as we were trying to open a restaurant. And, but 90% fail in the first 5 years. So what happens in that span, right? We just made it past 3 years somehow, and we've got a killer team, which is, the next link you start to learn is, okay, after you start to get all that work done, you got to build a team. And, we've had the team build with us from the beginning. So we've got our executive chef, our lovely executive chef, Jamilka, and she's running an all-female kitchen now, which is a great joke because they say we went from Bro Marco to Bra Marco. And now the women definitely run the show. And we've got this team, and what we saw by traveling around the country and visiting all the other restaurants that inspired us and meeting with Mark Vetri, who's kind of, one of the best chefs in the country, and him and his team at Vetri kind of taking us under their wing, we started to see that these teams that all the people who didn't fail between years 3 and 5 built, put all of their energy into their people and into their team. Otherwise, what happens between years 3 and 5 is you get fatigued, you get tired, right? You're going to be a server who's with us from the beginning. Dr. Drew, our private events coordinator, started out washing dishes for us as a favor 3 years ago. Now he runs our $500,000 private events business with a whole team under himself, right? So we got these people who've been with us from the start. How do we keep them with us? And you start to look at, well, you don't want inconsistent pay, right? People need to know that their rent check's going to come due. It doesn't matter if it snows and it's a blizzard, right? And we kind of come up with this thing, and you do the numbers, and we're sharp. We've got our books, and we also have something called Excel, right? And You go and you proactively plan ahead of these things and make sure that the front and back of the house are paid on the same level and that they also all get at least 5% of profits now. So now everyone's incentivized to work together, right? All the costs that add up in a restaurant, there's another counterintuitive thing that we're preventing, right, is that most of the time in restaurants, the busier you get, the less money you make. Why? Because everyone's tired. That means your team doesn't have their 2 hours to plan what they're ordering. They order inefficiently, right? They order alcohol inefficiently, and all those little costs add up. So I'm going to end with one more quote, and it's a little bit longer, so I had to pull it out and read it on my phone, but it's something that's very important to me. And as you guys or anyone else gets out there to take their work ethic, sharpen their axe, and get it to the point where you're building a team and building a strategy that wins, I think it's something you need to remember because it's not all roses along the way. And this is from Marianne Williams. And I've seen it in a lot of movies and whatnot, and it's okay that I'm going to say it again because if you haven't heard it, you need to, and I'm okay with that. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Thank you.